Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. First video on the channel for a couple of weeks actually. Funny enough, I made this channel to follow the next 12 to 18 months, I guess, with all the things going on with Trump world, potentially a presidential campaign, potentially indictments, court cases, and so on. Got a lot coming up, starting on Monday, the 25th, with the civil lawsuit with Gigi and Carol regarding potentially a civil rape case and also defamation as a result of the ongoing things with that. It probably seems a bit weird why it's been a couple of weeks since Trump was indicted, a big thing happening in New York, and it's the first time I'm sort of doing anything about it. And there's a couple of reasons for that, but one of the reasons was I really wanted to make sure that I was fully clear on my thoughts, that I'd taken process. There's a lot to take in, a lot to process, and before I can give an opinion and break down some facts regarding this particular matter. So, firstly, what exactly has happened, particularly for those in the UK, the viewers in the UK, where in the UK the news is very vague. For example, Sky News will just they do a 5 minute sort of brief on basically the very high level facts. So there's no real substance. So Trump's been arrested and indicted on 34 charges relating to payments to porn star or a former porn star, Stormy Daniels, to cover up what was an alleged affair between the two during a presidential campaign, and that's about it. And so, because that's the only news that gets, I think a lot of people get. There's a lot more to it that isn't reported, particularly in the UK. And unless you have a lot more understanding of the complications, then it's hard to understand exactly what is going on. And certainly from an outside perspective, it looks, Democrats DA has just charged Donald Trump with paying off a porn star. Oh my God, crime of the century. But this is obviously political and so on. And I wanted to put a video that actually addresses the facts of the case. And then if your opinion still remains it's political, then by all means it's political. And feel free to leave your comments in the comment section and let me know otherwise. But what I'm going to do is I'm not going to glamour it up. I'm just simply point out some facts regarding the case. So firstly, Donald Trump has been indicted on 34 counts of falsifying business records. Now, let that sink in for a minute. Falsifying business records, i.e., it doesn't matter if he paid Stormy Daniels off because of an alleged affair during an election, or whether he was paying her off because she made him brownies. It doesn't matter. It's nothing. The context is slightly irrelevant in those charges because he falsified business records. He paid Michael Cohen X amount of hundreds of thousands of dollars, which he claimed were legal fees when they weren't legal fees. Now, the rest doesn't matter in that respect. In terms of the crime, falsifying business records. Now, where the context will come into play will be on the type of charge. Falsifying business records under New York state law. This isn't federal charges. These are local state charges. Each state within the United States has you have a federal jurisdiction which covers everything nationally, and then you have each state has their own local jurisdictions. New York State has its own jurisdictions, and the crime being alleged, the falsifying business records, relates to New York State crime. Okay, so it's not a federal thing. These alleged offences are what they call, or what has been known as, a misdemeanor. Now, the difference between a misdemeanor and a felony, or the main obvious clear difference, is one carries a minimum sentence and the other doesn't. So a misdemeanor would be deemed as a more lesser offence, and often, though not always, but often, it doesn't result in prison time. It can result in a fine, community service, that sort of thing. Whereas a felony normally carries a minimum jail term. So falsifying business records in New York is a misdemeanor. The reason why these 34 counts have been put through as felonies is you can upgrade that misdemeanor if you can prove that the falsifying business records was also committing another crime or covering up another crime, etc. So it wasn't just a case of I falsified business records. It could be I falsified business records so that ... Now, this is where context may come into play. So it's been alleged that Trump paid. So Michael Cohen had taken out a loan, a mortgage on his house, on his property, in order to pay off Stormy Daniels at the direction of President Trump, or former President Donald Trump. And so I think it was $135,000. So when Cohen paid Stormy Daniels $135,000, that Trump then reimbursed Michael Cohen, but he didn't reimburse him $135,000. Firstly, he reimbursed him over several checks, over several payments. It wasn't just a one-off check. But also, because Michael Cohen had to take a loan out, there would have been interest on that. So Donald Trump would have covered the interest payments, for example. There would have been taxes. So Donald Trump paid the taxes and so on. And bear in mind, because Donald Trump reported in the business records that he was paying Michael Cohen for legal services, Michael Cohen had to declare that and pay the taxes on it. So giving Michael Cohen just $135,000 flat out would have actually meant by the time you take off the taxes, paid the interest on the loan that he took out and so on, he would have obviously been out of pocket. So as a result, it's alleged that Trump paid Michael Cohen closer to about $400,000, I think it was, closer to $400,000 to cover the taxes, the interest, and so on and so forth. Bear in mind, this was paid over a long period, not just one check. Now, what crime is it that Trump could have committed which upgrades the misdemeanor to a felony? This is the talking point that we're not entirely sure yet. So there's two, in my opinion, there's two possible scenarios here. Firstly, that they've got evidence, and for it to be so, it's alleged that by paying Stormy Daniels, at the time they did. Bear in mind, they paid Stormy Daniels off when she was about to go public with the story, right at the time where there was the busgate, where Trump was caught in a recording saying about grabbing women by the meows. It's a terrible meow, I know, but we'll try and keep it fairly clean on the channel, by the genital area. And that was causing a lot of bad press, bad publicity for Trump in the polls, particularly amongst women voters. And bear in mind, he was running against a female candidate in Hillary Clinton. And this coming out at literally just after would have been quite damaging. Now, bearing in mind, Trump won several states by less than 1%. So it could have literally made a difference in terms of the election, whether or not that story did come out or not at the time. But nevertheless, that bit is irrelevant. What is relevant is that if they used that money to pay off Stormy Daniels, knowing that with the intent of it preventing a bad publicity that could affect their polling ratings, then it's campaign money. It's that simple. It should be therefore declared as campaign financing. However, that is difficult to prove. It's not easy to prove that was the intent, and you have to show intent. However, it could be, and we don't know. We don't know what evidence has been presented. We just don't know. What I would argue, if they were to use that and run with that as the crime that was committed to upgrade the misdemeanor to a felony, they would need what I would call a smoking gun. I.e., if there was an email, a text, a recording of a conversation where they talk, where they say a message where Trump says, yes, pay off Stormy Daniels, I don't want that story coming out because it would affect my poll numbers, that would be a smoking gun. It would mean that is what the payment's for. It was specifically designed to prevent negative influence at a time of a general election. However, I suspect they don't have that as the proof. But this is the thing. I don't think that's the crime they are going to charge for. I think the crime that they are probably looking at is taxes. The reason why is this. Now, if you falsified business records and you put down, this $400,000 for legal services when it wasn't legal services, he may have been writing that off, so therefore it was tax deductible. Now, if that is the case, and we don't know yet if that is or not, but I would guess that's what they're looking at. That's normally a lot easier to prove, because anything with financial crimes is a paper record. It doesn't require a testimony by someone. It just simply requires it's very, very easy to prove financial crimes when it's documented, when it's paper. Documents don't lie, as they say. Now, go to a jury and say Trump has a history of writing off bad taxes, for example, and you can point to the fact that his company has been charged and convicted 17 times, 17 counts of tax violations. His chief financial officer is sat in prison right now for tax violations, and Trump has currently being sued, and by the time this goes to trial, that case will be over, in terms of the New York Attorney General, who is suing Trump for a range of tax fraud for several $100 million. So Trump is hardly, or certainly they can paint a very clear picture to a jury, this man has fiddled his taxes for donkeys. His company's found guilty, his chief financial officer's guilty, he's been sued by the New York Attorney General for tax fraud violations and so on. And so that could potentially be the crime that they use to upgrade the misdemeanor to a felony. I hope you're following me. I know it's a lot to take in, and this is why why I wanted to take a bit of time to put it into a bit more clear perspective. Now, what I would say for those who say this whole thing is just a political spectacle, so to speak. Firstly, what gains are there? This is what I would argue. What gains are there for the Democrats to do this, to charge Trump with this? I mean, firstly, again, it's a DA, it's a lawyer. They're not federal. They are Democrats. They're elected. But does that mean if every Democrat or every Democrat city or town or district can't charge someone who is a Republican if they break the law? Because that wouldn't seem like, it would put someone, and the same for the other way around. Can a Republican therefore not charge a Democrat in a Republican held area, for example? You can't go on political bias about whether or not someone should be able to be charged or not. The facts should be the facts, whether they are liberal, whether they are conservative, whether they're a Democrat or a Republican. It shouldn't matter. The law is the law, and it applies both ways. And that is why, by the way, you have grand juries. It's why you have trials. It's why you have a jury trial, because that prevents it being a political spectacle, because you can't just... And Trump found out the hard way multiple occasions when he was in the White House, when he persistently asked his Attorney General to find charges and charge Biden or charge Clinton and so on. And he was told in uncertain terms, we can't just go out there and charge people. You can't do it. You have to have probable cause to get a judge to agree to convening a grand jury. Then you've got to get the grand jury to vote and issue an indictment in the first place. So you still need some evidence there of a crime. You can't just say, well, do it for the sake of doing it. Find something, anything. You have to have the evidence there. And just for the record, Trump or his legal team have not denied that the records were falsified. They've not said that they didn't pay Michael Cohen to pay off Stormy Daniels. They're just saying that that's not really a crime. Paying off a porn star for potentially an alleged affair from a story isn't a crime. And no, that's not a crime if it's reported in the correct way. The question here is, why wasn't it reported in the correct way? Trump's legal team argued that is because they didn't want, if they put down in the company's books that it was a payoff and so on, that Melania would have seen the books and so on. Just an FYI, Melania's been with Trump for a long time, and she's never had access to the books. So it's not an argument that will hold up in court. Frankly, it won't hold up in court. Alvin Bragg, by the way, has got, since he's been in office, he's charged over 100 of these falsifying business records, and he's won every one of them. Business records, financial crimes, etc. Again, I have to state, they are easy cases to prove. They are documented. Documents don't lie. So that is just where I wanted to get a brief prediction for those who perhaps don't understand or know very little, not because they're naive, but because some particularly in the UK, the press are very vague of what they're reporting and really need a bit more in-depth context and facts in order to make a genuinely reasonable conclusion. Until the next time, take care. If you do like the video, don't forget to click that like button, and also don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you all on the next one.